Grab a cup of tea or a glass of wine and tune in for Inspired Conversations with publisher Linda Joy. On Tuesdays at 2 p.m. Eastern, Linda creates sacred space for leading female luminaries, empowering authors, heart-centered female entrepreneurs, coaches, and healers. A soulful venue where guests openly share the fears and obstacles they've overcome, wisdom and lessons learned, and the personal journey that led them to the transformational work they do in the world. Inspired Conversations to empower you on your path to authentic, soulful living.
Welcome to Inspired Conversations. I'm your host, Linda Joy, Mindset Mojo mentor, intentional living guide, and publisher of Aspire magazine, the premier inspirational magazine for women since 2006. You can grab your free subscription at subscribe-to-aspire.com. You know, some of my favorite topics are talking about energy and intuition and really coming to a deeper understanding of we are all energetic beings, right? And we can work with that energy. That's why I'm super excited to have this conversation with today's guest because, you know, in a world rocked by change, many of you, like myself, may be wondering, how can we work from the inside out to evolve our energies, build resilience, as well as support our personal and planetary well-being? Well, today in this inspiring conversation, energy healer and author Ellen Meredith offers inspiring information and practical tools that you need to enlist your body's wisdom for healing and optimal wellness. Ellen is the author of Your Body Will Show You the Way, as well as The Language Your Body Speaks. She's been in practice since 1984 as an energy healer, conscious channel, and medical intuitive, helping over 10,000 clients and students worldwide. As an energy medicine practitioner, Ellen helps clients engage with the body's energies to activate healing. She teaches energy medicine courses on the Shift Network and has served on the faculty of energy medicine pioneer Donna Eden since 2010. Welcome, Ellen.
Thank you so much, Linda. I'm really, really happy to be here today.
Well, I got to tell you, I have your book, Your Body Will Show You the Way, and the cover is gorgeous. I started diving in a couple of days ago, and I know we're going to be talking about that and so much more, but there was a chapter that jumped out at me because I'm all about, like, there's power in our words, isn't there?
Right.
There's energy in our words, and on chapter 2, this really jumped out at me. It's called Rename, Reframe, and Reclaim.
Yes.
And I'm like, just never mind the rest of your book. So much wisdom. But I was like, oh my, because we get into stories, don't we? So let's talk about that. What led you to creating or identifying the rename, reframe, and reclaim process and energy?
Okay. Well, actually, I have a story to tell about that. I was kind of awakened to this whole concept. And the concept is that names carry baggage, right? If someone tells you you have cancer, you get this whole set of associations with what they've told you you've got, even though cancer is as common as the last name Smith. I mean, there's so many different kinds of cancer. They're not at all the same thing, but we associate so much with our words that sometimes we can't heal because we've keyed into everything involved with the illness that has been diagnosed or given to us. And so it is useful in all cases to look at how do we name things, how do we frame things, you know, what's the concept. And I was awakened to this years and years ago. A friend of mine went on a pilgrimage to Asia. She was a very devout Buddhist, and she wanted to investigate the sites that were sacred to Kuan Yin, who is the feminine form of the Buddha. And she had this wonderful sort of 6-month pilgrimage and really deepened in her practice. And she got home and almost immediately developed this very painful, itchy, red, embarrassing, swollen situation. I don't even know what to call it, in her private parts. And it really was uncomfortable and it was unpleasant. So she went to tropical medicine specialists, and they did a bunch of tests and they tried a bunch of salves and nothing worked. And she went for acupuncture and she went to a naturopath and she tried all kinds of things. But this situation came and went, and she was calling it the plague, that she had gotten the plague. And it started to really eat away at the progress she'd made in her spiritual practice. And it started to kind of obsess her and be her whole life. And one day she said, look, this isn't working. What do I know, or what can I do to change this situation? Because I'm having trouble getting rid of this plague. And she said, well, I guess I need to look at my Buddhism and my Buddhist practice and say, what do I know about dealing with something like this? And I don't know if you know, like in China, there's these puzzles that are straw tubes. I don't know if you've ever seen them, that you stick your fingers in each end of the tube,
Oh,
and
yeah.
then you can't pull your fingers out again.
Yes.
And for a
But yeah.
spoiler alert, the solution to that puzzle is you don't pull, you push inward, and it releases your fingers. And so she was thinking about that, saying, I need to stop pulling against this situation. I need to push inward. And so she said, and I have to stop calling it the plague, because really, it's very funny, but it's not getting me anywhere. And she said, and I have to recognize that it isn't attacking me, it's a teacher. Because in Buddhism, you look at every experience as a teacher. So she said, okay, I need a name for you. I need to stop calling you the plague. What should I call you? She didn't name it, she asked for a name. And her body, immediately in her mind, came the name Blanche. Now, I thought that was hilarious because Blanche means white in French, and it was a very red, angry illness or situation. And so she said, okay, Blanche, I'm not here to get rid of you. I'm here to understand you and learn from you. What can I do to work with you and understand what you're here to teach me? And so she started an ongoing dialogue with Blanche, and some of it was words, but some of it was sensations and imagery. And she used everything she knew from her Buddhism to tune into her body. And what would happen is, she'd be getting ready to eat something and Blanche would flare up. And she'd say, Blanche, what's going on? What can I do for you? And she'd just get this image of, eat this instead, or, I don't want what you're about to do. And so she'd put the food away and get something else out, and until Blanche kind of signaled to her, yeah, that's better. Or she'd be getting ready to go to a party and she'd be all dressed up and Blanche would flare and she'd say, oh, Blanche, here you are again. Okay, what do you need? And she'd tune in, and maybe Blanche would give her the image of a sitz bath, sitting in cold water. So she'd take off her clothes, sit in cold water, and not go to the party. And it took her about 3 weeks of intensive daily dialogue, moment by moment, hour by hour, with Blanche. And then Blanche disappeared, because it was about really being able to enter into what her body needed moment by moment in order to shift the situation, shift the dynamics that created the rash, etc. And so out of that, it was a real aha moment for me as a healer, that if we ask our illness or our relationship problem or our struggle at work, if we ask it for a new name that doesn't carry the baggage of, divorce or of, downsizing or whatever the names are that were given by our society, if you rename it and then take it into a different framework. So instead of, my husband dumped me, maybe it's my husband and I are splitting, and there's a lot I can learn from that relationship going forward. Or, there's other ways to reframe it, take it away from I've got the plague to I have a teacher. And then by doing that, we reclaim our ability to participate in what's happening to us. We don't catch an illness. An illness is a communication between us and our body. We don't get blindsided by someone else's choices. Their choices are an invitation for us to awaken to our own choices, et cetera, et cetera.
So powerful. It really resonates with me because for me, words have power. I'm a publisher, maybe that's why.
Yes.
And honestly, on an energetic level, it really speaks to me. And before we go to the first break, I'll share a quick story that I was recently hospitalized for a second time in a year, and I was in the hospital, and it was touch and go for a little while last summer. And they would walk in my room, and every time they walk in, hey, Lynn, you know that energy, Ellen, hey,
Yeah.
Lynn, how you doing? And I would always respond, I'm doing amazing, getting better every moment.
Yeah.
And,
Yeah.
and the nurse said to me, hey, darling, I know what you're going through. And I said, I'm holding the vision of healing. And they have said that my recovery both times, I'm 12 weeks post-op on this, the surgeon has asked me to speak to his nurses twice already because he said, your mindset and the vision you held for health, even when everything around you was mirroring the opposite, he said, I've never seen anything like it. I said, words have power. I was not going to go into the energy of the story. So thank
Right.
you for that. And let's take a quick break, Ellen, so then I won't have to interrupt you. And we're going to dive in because I want to hear your insights on that.
Okay.
We'll be back in a moment with Ellen Meredith of ellenmeredith.com. Please go to her site, learn about all her sacred offerings, and of course, grab a copy of her book, Your Body Will Show You the Way. We'll be back in a moment, my friends.
This is OTRFM, part of the IOM radio network.
Inspiration for a Woman's Soul. Aspire Magazine, inspiring and supporting women on the path of self-discovery. Claim your free digital subscription today, which includes access to thousands of dollars of personal development bonus gifts from Team Inspiration partners. Claim your Aspire Magazine subscription today at subscribetoaspire.com.
Hey America, we need to have a little talk. We've got more food than we know what to do with in this country, yet 17 million kids in America are struggling with hunger. Makes no sense. Luckily, the Feeding America nationwide network of food banks has volunteers gathering excess food and getting it to hungry kids. They're kind of like food angels. Hey, become a food angel yourself by supporting Feeding America in your local food bank at feedingamerica.org. We can't do it without your help. Brought to you by Feeding America and the Ad Council.
Are you trying to get from point A to point B and need a little advice? Connect with the counselors at OMTimes Advisors. Whether you're looking for a life coach or a spiritual intuitive, the advisors participating at advisors.omtimes.com were carefully chosen based on their gifts, skills, and professionalism. OMTimes Advisors, connecting you with the best advisors in the business.
Hi everyone, this is Shay Parker, the host of Best of the Best, which airs live right here on IOM Radio every Tuesday night at 8 p.m. Eastern and 5 p.m. Pacific. I'm super excited to bring you expert guest hosts, spiritual discussions, free psychic readings, and so much more. I can promise that you will not want to miss this one-of-a-kind, fun, yet touching, down-to-earth show. Join us every Tuesday night at 8 p.m. Eastern, 9 p.m. Pacific on OTRFM. This is Shay Parker, and I can't wait to see you there.
This is OTRFM, part of the IOM radio network.
Welcome back. You're listening to Inspired Conversations. With me today is Ellen Meredith, author of Your Body Will Show You the Way, as well as The Language Your Body Speaks. So, Ellen, you had mentioned cancer before and holding on to that energy, right?
Right.
The story I just shared with you is similar to the same thing, right? I would not claim, no matter what the outside was, IVs, tests, surgeries. I chose health. I chose healing, and I believe my body listened.
Right. Right.
It didn't
And
change my circumstances. I was still going to have surgery. I was still going to go through my healing process. It wasn't going to change my outside circumstances, but I gave my body the ability to heal by envisioning healing and ease and grace. That's my personal belief anyway.
Oh gosh, I'm with you on that. And I think it goes beyond just either positive thinking or better words. I really believe that first of all, I know that our bodies are made of energy, and I think there's a lot of agreement at that what seems really solid as a physical body is in fact an exchange of energies. And we're fed by energies and fueled by them. And the body, mind, and spirit are constantly communicating using energy. And so when we use different words, when we choose how to approach a situation, we're choosing how to work with the energies we're made of. And we're choosing to communicate and have our own authorship, reclaim our authorship of our life. And it's not about I'm going to visualize the outcome. It's that I'm going to participate differently. And when I participate differently, I have a different dynamic, and that dynamic leads to different health outcomes. And one thing in what I just said that I think is really important to point out, and I don't hear enough people saying it, is that because we use the word energy, our minds are trained to go right to science, what science says about energy. And science tends to denature everything. It tends to sort of dissect it, take it apart, and denature it. So they'll talk about neutrons and protons and electrons, which is fascinating. But the energies that make us up, the subtle energies we're made of, they have intelligence. They have consciousness. They may be our consciousness in physical form. So when you're sitting there having a different attitude than the people around you and giving something a name and dialoguing with it with respect and letting it teach you and letting it help you make different decisions, you're not just manipulating this inert stuff of energy. You're having an intelligent planning meeting with the energies you're made of, and you're moving not just towards a different outcome, but towards a different way of inhabiting each moment between now and the outcome. And I think our culture is so outside in, so much about outcomes and how it looks to the outside and what we all agree on as, in the majority, and all of those outside in ways of thinking. We don't know how to work from the inside out and develop our own agency, including the creation of self. I mean, every moment you and I are creating this amazing committee of three, this spirit playing the music of the soul on the instrument of the body. So you've got the music of the soul, that's your spirit. You've got the body, that's your instrument. And you've got the mind, which is the musician learning to play that instrument. And in any moment, we can evolve the instrument. We can learn some new tricks as a musician and play that instrument differently. And we can tune into the music of the soul in a deeper way so that we are expressing our truths more fully. And I think that when we make that shift to understanding life from the inside out, as opposed to I'm trying to fulfill some kind of destiny that society or life or fate has assigned to me, when we really shift to creative authorship of our own lives, then it's not just about programming ourselves with a positive attitude, though that's a start. It really is about making different decisions moment by moment about how these energies are going to move and create form.
I just love the phrases you use because when I got on the path, my spiritual path, my life changed. And I tell my clients it's when I started living from the inside out instead of the outside in.
Yeah.
And you write about the difference of that. So I'd love to dive a little more and give some examples of what you mean by outside in thinking and inside out thinking. So a listener right now going, what does that mean?
Okay.
Explain what that would be like for them.
Yeah, absolutely. Because our culture just so emphasizes that objective outside authority over the subjective inner knowing and inner guidance. And so in the book, I go into 6 different dimensions of this. I always think that when someone says something, it's good to dive into, well, what does that really mean? Including myself as an author. So I said, okay, so the first thing is ask yourself, where do I get information? Now, certainly when I want to know something, my tendency lately is to go Google it, right? What did other people say about it? And that's our culture, right? What do experts out there say? But what about if we dive in and say, what do I know from my own experience? What can I perceive or deduce from what I can observe? So where do I get information? Do I go inward to get any information? And I want to say we have a guidance system built into our body, into every fiber of our being. And if we can access it, if we can activate that guidance system, it's not just a voice telling us what to do, it's knowing in all the ways we know, in our gut, in our bones, we have in our language all different ways of knowing. When we can access that knowing, we have all kinds of information available to us. And another question to ask is, where and how do I get my gratification? Am I fulfilled when other people recognize my accomplishments? Am I fulfilled when I get that A on the paper? That's outside in gratification, where other people accept you. You have fame, you have recognition, and you're gratified. Or do I get gratified by the doing of the task, by writing the paper itself, by living that moment, whether someone else recognizes it or not? And too often, especially women, we doubt ourselves because we don't see our value reflected by others, outside in. But if we can feel the value of our choices from the inside out, we're getting gratified just by our being rather than through our doing. And that's, the being is much more of an inside out center. A third question I ask is, how do I address or approach a problem? Now, our culture, the favorite question to ask in our culture, maybe in all realms, is what's wrong and how do I fix it? Okay, you go to the doctor, they say, what's wrong and how can we fix it? Maybe we'll give you a pill or something. And that's not bad. I mean, none of these outside ins are horrible. We just need to bring the inside out up and be able to access it and use it. So the question for an inside out approach isn't what's wrong and how do I fix it, but what's needed and how can I cultivate it? And, when you were in the hospital having that positive attitude, you weren't in denial that you were in the hospital. You were saying, what do I want to cultivate?
Yes, you beautifully named it. It wasn't positive thinking. It was, what energy do I want to feel? I want to still feel joy, love, healed, etc. It was how I wanted to feel.
Right, right. And when we go to the ice cream store, we don't look at the person next to them and say, whoa, why did you choose Rocky Road? We say, oh, that's what they chose. Yet when we're in a situation where everybody else is going for chocolate mint and we want Rocky Road, they question it like, well, are you in denial? Why do you have this attitude when really you should be feeling X or Y? And that should be configuration is very much outside in thinking. What are the shoulds that other people expect of me, as opposed to what do I feel inside is probably the healthiest, best way to proceed with this situation, even if it's painful and difficult. So another aspect of this outside in versus inside out is we ask, well, what evidence do I most readily accept? And in our culture, we've had how many thousands of years of sort of building up to this this notion that if it's really objective, if you can make it generic and it's true of everyone, it's more true than something that's just true for me, right? So our evidence has to be almost impersonal, and you have to do a study that controls for personal differences and eliminates the individual quirks. And that's a very much outside in way of thinking that's the only evidence. But there's the evidence of our subjective experience, our inner truth, what's true for me. And I'm left-handed, so I've lived in a world my whole life where 9 out of 10 people are right-handed, and yet that's not my truth. And if I had been, in my uncle's generation, he was forced to switch, and it caused severe personality problems for him. I wasn't forced to switch. People just kind of knew, oh yeah, a few people are left-handed. But that kind of forces you to say, what else isn't true that is true for most people, but it isn't true for me? What evidence, and where do I get my evidence? And, so one of the answers is, what do you know from your lived experience? And then from the access to that voice within, that inner guidance of your soul or your spirit or whatever you want to call that, your wiser self.
And I want to dive deeper into this, because the inner guidance system, me accessing my own and learning how to be instead of do over the years, has completely changed my life. We're going to take another break, Ellen. When we come back, I want to have you talk about the inner guidance system and why you believe it's important in navigating change, which so many of us are going through change.
Okay. Yeah.
We'll be back in a moment, my friends. I am with Ellen Meredith of ellenmeredith.com. Be sure to check out her website for programs and, of course, grab a copy of Your Body Will Show You the Way. We'll be back in a moment.
This is OTRFM, part of the IOM radio network.
Are you ready to create and live the divinely guided life intended for you? A life not bound by your past or tied to a specific future. A life beyond your fears and what-ifs that is filled with limitless possibilities. Experiencing an empowered life of fulfillment, joy, and connection is possible when you embrace a spiritual, solutions-centered lifestyle. Through her transformational teachings and programs, Lisa Hermata, empowered Life View Guide, life transformation mentor, and founder of Love is the Seed, empowers women to break the barriers holding them back from living their sacred truth so they can find greater connection with their inner wisdom and their divine source to co-create a life that brings peace, joy, and self-acceptance. Visit loveistheseed.com for positive guidance and valuable resources to support you in embracing an empowered life view.
OMTimes Magazine is one of the leading online content providers of positivity, wellness, and personal empowerment. A philanthropic organization, their net proceeds are funneled to support worldwide charity initiatives via Humanity Healing International. Through their commitment to creating community and providing conscious content, they aspire to uplift humanity on a global scale. OMTimes, co-creating a more conscious lifestyle.
This is Terry Van Horn, and I want to invite you to join me for my weekly radio show, Healing Light, on OMTimes Radio every Wednesday at 6 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. On Healing Light, we want to bring love, light, and blessings into your world. You can find out more about us at www.healinglightonline.com. Blessings.
Me, a cat, moving in with a new human. It took a little getting used to. She has these weird games she likes to play, like this giant feather. She sticks it in my face. I swat it away. She sticks it in my face. I swat it away. It's almost like she thinks I enjoy it. But seeing how much fun she gets out of it, well, I guess it makes it all worth it. Humans.
A person is the best thing to happen to a shelter pet. Be that person. Adopt. Brought to you by the Ad Council and the ShelterPetProject.org.
This is OTRFM, part of the IOM radio network.
You're listening to Inspired Conversations. Welcome back. We are talking about, in this segment, about your inner guidance system. So in the book, you write about that. I'd love for you to share, Ellen, why it's so important in helping us navigate change.
Okay, well, can you imagine having a ship that didn't have a guidance system to help it figure out, where to turn and what's going on and whether the boat is right or not? The notion of inner guidance, I think, has been a little corrupted in our society because we're so outside in that we think of inner guidance as some voice coming from somewhere telling us what to do, kind of like a little GPS or something. And instead, I think that it's built into every fiber of our being, and it is the activation of our connection with humanity, our connection with all that is. If you think about the bees, they don't have to go to school to learn how to be bees and do what they do. And you think about the dolphins and other creatures that live in community, the trees even, they all have a swarm consciousness and a kind of communication that happens between them. And we do too. We are creatures, and we have this built-in ability to tune in. What does the body need? We have the built-in ability to tune in to how is this one person, Ellen, connected to all of humanity, or Linda. How are we all connected, and how can that guide our choices? And so, people think, well, if I'm going to have inner guidance, it has to be a voice in my head. And that can be a very scary thing for some people. And I just don't think that's how guidance shows up. You know how you take a moment off, you stop, there's a lull in your day. If you say, what do I need right now? Just what do I need right now? You often get a one-word answer like take a break, or well, it's not one word, but one thought, or wiggle your toes, or go for a walk, or drink something. That guidance, that kind of moment by moment, do I go left or right here? And that pull that shows us what's probably a productive path is something that we really need to be able to tune into. And we so drown it out with overstimulation in our culture, with stimulants. I feel tired, and instead of stopping to rest or to stretch or do something that helps shift that tired state, I drink coffee and go into higher stimulation, which fatigues me more, but then I can't hear the fatigue and I can't respond to it. So the inner guidance system is really simple little moments of connection, as well as sort of larger picture thinking that comes to us through dreams and imagery and sensations. And I always say the way to activate your inner guidance system, and I talk about this in detail in the book, is first of all, you have to show up. Too many of us are so focused on things outside ourselves, we don't tune in and show up and ask questions, dialogue with our own energies. And it's not the same as interview. Dialogue is conversation that we have that deepens us into relationship with our own being, our own physical self, our own mind, our own spirit. And I always say, we have to use energy to speak to energy, because energy is the language the body speaks. So that includes touch, rhythm, sound, light, image, movement, gesture, taste, scent, feeling, sensations, direct knowing, even some other stuff that we don't think of as senses. And so we need to train our body to actually recognize what, did I just say we need to train our mind to recognize what the body actually is trying to communicate. And the body will communicate not only for itself, but also sometimes for our wiser self or our spirit. So I don't know if that's too long an answer to what you asked.
No, it's perfect. And my question is, like, I remember when I first heard the topic of inner guidance, divine, your your inner wisdom and all that. And I remember asking the question all the time, well, how do I know if it's really my inner wisdom and not my ego?
Right.
I know my own personal answer that I've learned over the years, but I'd love to hear yours, because I know in conversations with the women I serve, they're like, Linda, how do I know that's just not me, my mind saying it? So Ellen, please talk to them about that.
Okay. Well, in our culture, we tend to do our spirituality from the brain up. It's all in our third eye and our seventh chakra and all that, the notion that spirituality is higher and it's from the head up. So one way you can know is to see where you know it and what the sensation is of knowing something, because our brain is extensively socialized and trained by our society. And so when the answers and all the thinking and all the processing is happening up there, chances are there's some distortion. I have a new exercise. It's not even in the book yet. It's not going to go in that book, but I haven't put it in a book yet, that I'd love to teach. It's something we can do on the radio or on the podcast. So I'd like you to, you can focus on some situation that is maybe bothering you, or that your mind wants to think about right now, and just think about it. Just in your brain, just think about this situation, and maybe the questions you're asking and whatever. Just focus in on it a second. Okay. Now you're gonna take your hand and actually grab that thought, kind of Harry Potter-esque. You're going to grab it and pull it out of your brain and put it into your heart. Okay, so you're just taking hold of that thought. You're grabbing it kind of like a wisp of smoke, and you're putting it right in your heart. And now let your heart think about that situation for a moment. And notice, maybe your heart doesn't use words. If you're going back to your brain to put it into words, try to stay with the language your heart wants to use. Okay. I'm going to go a little faster than maybe you'll do it when you do it on your own later, but you're going to now, again, grab that thought, very Harry Potter style. You're going to grab it and pull it out with your hand and put it into your solar plexus, your stomach area. And again, let your stomach process that thought. And by now, maybe it's not words at all. It might take another form altogether. Okay, and then we're going to just grab that thought, pull it out one more time, and put it down in your second chakra, which is your gut area, halfway between your belly button and your pubis. You're just going to put that thought right into your gut and let your gut sit with that thought for a moment. Okay, do you want to say anything about, I don't know if you did it with us, do you want to say anything about that before I jump in a little bit?
I could actually feel it because I did what you said. I said, like, pulled it out of my head. It was like visceral. I used my hand to actually do it.
Awesome.
For the question that I was had asked, a word just floated to the surface. It was about part of my recovery of what I need now in my diet. And it was just a word that floated to the surface. So I thought it was wonderful because it wasn't a thought. It was just, it was like something floating on a bubble to my awareness.
Cool. Yeah, and that's one way to kind of take guidance or take the search for guidance to your whole body and start asking not how do you know it, but where do you know it, and what supports it. What would happen if you ask it for a name in each place, if you were to reframe it a little bit. So I always say that we don't just take guidance as a given. If if something comes from a disembodied voice out there, that doesn't make it more true than an embodied knowing. And in fact, I would argue that embodied knowing may turn out to be a little more true for us over time once we actually learn how to hear the body and not distort it with our brains. So a lot of learning to speak energy is training your mind to recognize what the rest of you is already doing, which is an ongoing, just under the surface of our awareness, there's this ongoing communication between body, mind, and spirit. And as we do energy medicine to tune into it, it helps us to really participate in that ongoing conversation more fully. And once we're in the conversation, it's not that you don't have doubts, but you understand who's saying what and why and how it serves all the different parts of us or the different dimensions of us in a way that you're making a better informed choice.
I've got to tell you, I'm looking, and just this conversation, I was just peeking inside the book to go. I knew there was a chapter I wanted to make sure we get to. So let's take our last break. In the final segment, I want to talk about grounding and centering in a changing world, because we all know we're in an era of accelerated change. So
yes,
let's come back for our final segment, and we'll close out with that, my friend. We'll be back in a moment. Visit ellenmeredith.com for more about the magical and potent work that Ellen is doing in the world. We'll be back in a moment, my friends.
This is OTRFM, part of the IOM Radio Network.
It's time to begin the adventure of a lifetime by nurturing the most important relationship you will ever have, the relationship with yourself. Kelly Grimes, self-nurturing expert, speaker, and author of the bestseller, The Art of Self-Nurturing, a field guide to living with more peace, joy, and meaning, shares that a self-nurturing practice is not about being perfect or completing another thing on your to-do list, but rather nurturing a relationship with yourself. In The Art of Self-Nurturing, you'll discover the inspiration, examples, reflective questions, and self-nurturing practices that will empower you to become the artist of your own life and see self-nurturing as an art form. Rather than living from obligation and overwhelm, you will learn to cultivate a life filled with self-compassion and self-love. Order your copy today at artofselfnurturingbook.com and receive the Self-Nurturing Starter Kit as a supportive gift.
OMTimes Magazine is one of the leading online content providers of positivity, wellness, and personal empowerment. A philanthropic organization, their net proceeds are funneled to support worldwide charity initiatives via Humanity Healing International. Through their commitment to creating community and providing conscious content, they aspire to uplift humanity on a global scale. OMTimes, co-creating a more conscious lifestyle. The number one reason girls drop out of school in sub-Saharan Africa is lack of access to feminine hygiene products. The Pads for Schoolgirls Project, an outreach of Humanity Healing International, is changing this paradigm by setting up sewing programs at schools, teaching girls a vocational skill while producing the reusable pads that help keep them attending classes. The girls pay it forward by making and giving pad kits to other girls in need. To learn more, visit humanityhealing.org. Humanity Healing is where your heart is.
This is OTR FM, part of the IOM Radio Network.
Welcome back. You're listening to Inspired Conversations. So, Ellen, I'd love to end this last segment talking about, how we can ground and center in a changing world. I hear so many people using words like, I feel like I'm caught in a world when I can't ground myself. I feel like it's always something. And I'm like, I believe it's because we're focusing on the outside instead of the inside. That's me. It's how I stay grounded.
Yeah.
I'd love your thoughts.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, I've got a whole book full of thoughts on that topic. So I'll try to summarize some of them here and then, invite people to go and really explore the energy medicine and all the stuff that I put in to support that. But I really believe that this time it's not just about more coming at us, but that it really is a sea change. And that we need to evolve our instruments to handle not just more complexity, but a different way of traveling in this life. Not just re-employing ourselves, but maybe redeploying ourselves, to live differently and not just survive change or manage change, but actually thrive within it. And, just like you can't, if you have a windmill, you need wind to fuel it. And if you have a gas engine, you need gas to fuel it. We need to find ways to understand what our engine is and how to fuel it. And so where we're moving from is a very binary kind of thinking, a very either or mentality. It's us versus them. It's black or white. It's very binary, and it's getting us in trouble because the two poles are so far apart right now, and there's real conflicts between left and right and us and them and all of that stuff. It's really a problematic way of being to work in that binary system. So what we're evolving towards is what I call spherical consciousness, the ability to recognize the both and, that many realities can be true, and how to hold them in our awareness and work with them respectfully and see them as parts of a whole. And so we're all awakening to this tendency, and so we need different ways to ground. It used to be, you could visualize putting roots in the earth and that would ground you. But what does that do for you if the earth herself is in trouble and is screaming at us to change how we live our lives and to become more sustainable? It's kind of like, being in a scary situation with mom, and mom's terrified too. She may console you a little bit, but she may not be the best grounding in that moment. So one of the things I do is I break down the concept of grounding a little bit into some parts, because, how do I ground? If you think about the grounding of a grounding wire, for example, that's about wicking off excess energy. So if you say, how do I wick off excess energy in my life? How do I remove the energy I don't need? Well, that's one form of grounding that a lot of us don't think of. Like, how do I ground in this life? Well, how do I get rid of what I don't need? And I give some exercises for that. How do I root? When you send down the roots into the earth, it's bringing nourishment up. So how do I get appropriate and adequate nourishment for myself? And it's not just about, oh, the earth is poisoned, so I have to eat all organics. It's moment by moment. How much do I tune into what's nourishing to me versus how much do I tune into what I think I need to have accomplished so that I'll look good to others, or, you know, I'll accomplish some goal down the road? How much do I really emphasize nourishment in my choices? There's another dimension, which is centering. How much am I able to come back and center in myself? If a car is in neutral, you can't speed up. You can't do anything. If you aren't in gear, you can't move forward. So how do I center into myself and get in gear so that I can move forward or function? And then the fourth aspect of grounding is, how do I anchor? If the things, you know, if I was attached to my job and my job kind of went south with the pandemic, or if I'm anchored in my relationship and my partner's not who they were 2 years ago, or if I'm anchored in the activities I used to do and now they're not happening, where do we anchor ourselves so we don't just float around and feel insecure all the time? And I give energy medicine for each of these. Would you like a quick exercise for one of them? Well, actually, all my exercises address many of them, but I
Yes,
could do.
if it's about 2 minutes or so, yes.
Okay, we'll make it a quick one, and then everybody knows to do it again, but slow it down. So you're going to rub your hands together to just activate them. And I'm doing the simple ones here because we're on the radio. There's more complex ways to ground, but you're going to rub your hands together. You're going to place one hand on your second chakra, which is halfway between your pubic bone and your belly button. Just place it flat. And your other hand, you're going to put on your stomach or solar plexus. And you're just going to connect those two. Because healing starts with connecting. If you are not connected, you can't do anything. If you are connected, the communications can happen that begin the healing process or continue the healing process or allow you to function. So you're just connecting these two centers. The bottom one is about authentic self. The next one's about coping in the world. The centers each have some meaning. Then you're going to take your lower hand and put it on your heart. So you're connecting your solar plexus and your heart. And so that's, of course, the self you create in the world. You're coping with the world and your heart connection. And then you're going to take that bottom hand and put it on your forehead. So you're connecting your vision with your heart. And then you're going to move the hand on your heart back down to your second chakra. So you're connecting your forehead and your second chakra. Okay? It's just a pattern of connections that speak to many of the energy centers in your body that kind of distribute information. And by bringing connection in, it is a form of grounding. It's centering, it's grounding into your own being and anchoring into your own energetic spine. So quick explanation for something that actually it seems simple, but has a lot of complex influence on your body's energies and your ability to ground.
Ellen, I was doing it along as you were walking us through it, and I could immediately feel my breath slowing down, but more than that, I could actually feel myself in the chair. Like I felt like I was present in my body, even though I know I'm sitting in this chair. Sometimes you're not present that you're sitting in the chair. I could actually feel everything shifting.
Perfect.
Yeah, it was beautiful.
And the difference between doing something like that and visualizing sending roots into the earth is that your body becomes immediately engaged and it becomes a whole self exercise rather than just the brain kind of distributing information to the rest of us.
Yeah, and I could actually feel it. And I love that as you moved the bottom hand up, it was like the reconnection of the next circuit, correct?
Yeah.
Yeah, it was beautiful. Yeah. And what I love about that is it's so simple. You can do it anywhere, whenever it's needed.
Right. If you're rushing to a meeting and you realize you're frantic and not centered, you can take 2 minutes in the car and do it before you go in, and you're good to go. And so, you know, I try to provide a balance of lots of simple, easy, quick tools in my book. But also I've got something, for example, called Anchoring in the Stabilizing Sphere. That's a whole protocol of different little simple things that when you put them together, it makes you so robustly grounded, centered, rooted, and anchored, that it really gives you greater ability to cultivate spherical consciousness and have your body actually accept it and not go into reactivity in the face of all the binary thinking that we encounter in our everyday life.
And that's what I love about the book too. It's you give the resources and with drawings, with everything, so that we can implement, so we can integrate the teachings in. It isn't just your wisdom and your teaching, just saying, okay, now that I explained it, here's how.
Yeah, and again, they're all designed to be played with and explored and experimented with, not here's the right answer, because what works for me may not work for you, and so I give, I have lots of segments called Play With It, and lots of places where the intention is to see what happens when you do it and then adjust it based on what you need for your conversation with your essence, with your being.
It's beautiful. And I want to invite everyone, because you're everywhere, Ellen. But I want you to visit ellenmeredith.com. Grab a copy of Your Body Will Show You the Way. Also, you teach energy medicine courses on the Shift Network, so everybody watch for that. And I invite you to visit her website, because there's so many resources there to support you on this journey. And also, she has another book called The Language Your Body Speaks, and I invite you to take advantage of the wisdom and the sacred practices that she shares in all her books. Ellen, I want to thank you for joining me, and I love when you write for Aspire magazine. I always love sharing your wisdom, my friend.
Oh, thank you. And thank you for the work you're doing in the world. It's so important and it's so special, and I really appreciate it.
Well, I feel that I found my purpose using my media platforms to spread a message of love, light, feminine wisdom, so we can support others on their path.
Yeah. Well, I'm with you on that one.
Well, thank you again, Ellen. And until next time, my friends, choose love, choose joy, choose happiness. Blessings, everyone.
Thanks for listening to Inspired Conversations with publisher Linda Joy. Join our sacred space every Tuesday at 2 p.m. Eastern and meet leading female visionaries, empowering authors, heart-centered female entrepreneurs, coaches, and healers. Inspired Conversations with Linda Joy is a soulful venue where guests share the obstacles they've overcome, along with wisdom and lessons learned on their personal journey that led them to the transformational work they do in the world. Inspired Conversations to empower you on your path to authentic and soulful living.